Hello, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. I am back talking about a Cubs series win. Things have been really good in the land of Cubs baseball lately, and we're here to address all those things following a Detroit Tigers series or win over the Detroit Tigers, I should say. But before we get into everything, as always, I want to remind you be sure to head over to the YouTube. Like, subscribe, hit the bell button on Tap Sportsnet. You'll know when all of our great shows go live, just like we are here today. In addition to that, you can follow along with us on X as well as Facebook. We are still broadcasting, at least here at Cubs on Tap, from the On Tap Sportsnet X account. So be sure to be on the lookout for that as well as we get into these shows. But let's get into the damn thing. Cubs win. Cubs win a series. Cubs take care of business over the Tigers. They win game number one. They lose game number two, but they ultimately take care of business this afternoon on the north side. And absolutely throttle, quite frankly, the Detroit Tigers by a final score of 10-2 to take the series. Daniel Berry Sports Highlights here. Hey, everyone. Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday to you as well, because, again, we have a Cubs victory. So let's dive into it. Series results. So let's talk a little bit through it. Obviously, Tuesday's game was a little bit of a slow one, but a snoozer nonetheless, and it got off to a good start. I do have a good story about Tuesday's game that I'm going to come back to here in just a second, but they take care of business. They go down 1-0. Have no fear. The Cubs take care when it's there and here. 5 2/3 out of Javier Baez. He gets the W in that game, and really good pitching from Drew Smiley, from Tyson Miller, and from Porter Hodge to shut things down. That is a 3-1 victory. Cubs score 3 unanswered, ultimately to take the dub on Tuesday, but things weren't all fun and pretty. 4 runs off of 2 bombs on Jamison Tyone in the second inning was pretty much just about all she wrote. They added insult to injury in the 9th, they being the Detroit Tigers. A couple of base runners, a Riley Green single, and ultimately a Kerry Carpenter 3-run shot made it an 8-2 game. Rough debut for Jack Neely, and we're going to get into him a little bit more as well as this show persists. But from there, the Cubs do bounce back on Thursday. Justin Steele on the bump, just as we all expected. He was a treasure. 7 innings, 4 hits, just the 2 earned runs on the homer. Did not walk a single soul, and he struck out 10 in the winner. Again, it's a 10-2 victory to take the series. Grand slam from Miguel Amaya. He had himself a nice day. I believe it was 5 ribbies. If I confirmed, yes, it is 5 ribbies from Miguel Amaya. PCA had 2. Horner, Swanson, Bellinger all picking up RBIs in this game as well. And all those aforementioned players with multi-hit games. Miguel Amaya with a 3-hit game. He was 3 for 4 on the afternoon on Thursday. Was a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss. But let's dive into each of kind of some of the little notes of each of these games really quick here. Tuesday night, I was in attendance for Tuesday night, and we're going to address the elephant in the room here in just a hot second. But when it comes to actual gameplay on the field, we were sitting in the bleachers, just as we always are, hanging out with my Ty guy and Rachel and all the great people that sit out in left field. And it was 1-0. And I was just, offense wasn't getting it done. They weren't getting it going. And I had done this once before at a game this season where I just happened to be getting up out of my seat a lot. It was the Sunday night baseball game against the Cardinals. And the Cubs tended to score a lot of runs when I just didn't happen to be in my seat. So I looked at everybody sitting around us, and I said, you know what? I'll be back. I was like, I got to go use the restroom. I'm going to go grab an adult beverage, and because they need some runs. So I'm going to leave, and they're going to score runs. Sure as shit, I leave. 2 runs scored. I come back, and everybody looks at me and goes, holy, you called it. I was like, I know I called it. So, you know, the Ronstradamus, the Cubs on Tap fortune-telling lives on, including at the ballpark. But nonetheless, Tuesday's game, nice to see Dansby break out of the slump. Big homer. That one went pretty much right over our heads from where we were sitting. In addition to that, obviously the 2 runs on the Bellinger hit are things you love to see. Really strong pitching from Assad. Again, he still tends to walk people here and there. Only walked 1. He did K7. He settled in after a little bit of a shaky start, but overall, really good work from Javier Assad once again in 5 2/3. And that pretty much summed up Tuesday, again, minus the elephant in the room. We're going to talk about that here in a second. It does not apply to this little guy down here, these series results. Tuesday, I think, again, the long ball was a killer. A really cool note about Tuesday's game, though. Trey Sweeney, I don't know if a lot of people know who he is. He was the shortstop on Tuesday's game and hit a home run, his first career home run. He's an Eastern Illinois product, so anybody knows where Eastern Illinois University is. My fiance is an alum of that said prestigious university. So pretty cool to see that guy, get his first at Wrigley Field. Riley Green homered in that game that's his 18th of the season. We got to see a Christian Bethancourt bomb, which was kind of cool and kind of tough, but it wasn't enough, unfortunately, for the Cubbies. Offense was really quiet, just 6 hits, 2 of which came from Seiya Suzuki in this one. Jameson Taillon, this is the 3rd straight start now, and I want to talk just a little bit quickly about this. This is the 3rd straight start of Jameson Taillon giving up more than four or more runs. He gave up 5. I believe it was against the White Sox. It was 2 starts ago for him. His last start, he gave up 4 runs. This past start, now he's given up 4 runs. And again, a lot of it's been on the long ball. He's only getting killed on the long ball. He's not getting dinked and dunked a lot by any stretch. Want to see Jamo kind of settle in a little bit here. I mean, he's doing enough to keep the Cubs in games. He's not pitching horrendously. Just the long ball is getting him a little bit. And I think that's something to keep an eye on here as he persists through the rest of the season. We should see him at least one more time here in the month of August, maybe twice, depending how the calendar falls. But nonetheless, obviously we'll see him a couple times in September as well. So something to keep an eye on there. Just a lot of long balls have been getting to Jameson Taillon recently. And not exactly what you want to see over the course of the remainder of the season. Cubs are going to need him to win games if they have any hope and prayer of making the playoffs when it's all said and done in the NL wild card picture. But Thursday's game was fun. Christopher Cole here with a comment saying PCA trying to go opposite field is epic. Surely is. Justin Steele going 7 with 10 Ks and no walks, and just really the one mistake that he made all day. That was epic too. Really good day from friend of the program, Justin Steele. Just honestly, it was a really good day for the offense as a whole. Paredes was over. Bodie was over 1 in his only pinch hit appearance in this game. But Seiya with a base hit, Bush with a base hit, Belly had 2, Horner with 2, Swanson with 2, PCA with the big 2 RBI double to the opposite gap. And then Miguel Amaya having a banner day, carrying the offense. 3 of 4. He did K once, but again, 5 ribbies for Miguel Amaya. The grand slam, which was the 6th homer of the season, and then later that I guess it's an RBI single by technicality to get thrown out at second. But regardless, he does get the run driven in, and that's all that matters at the end of the day. Good work from Ethan Roberts, and then we got to see Jack Neely again, and he pitched beautifully. Now, again, pressure was off. They threw him into a situation where you're trying to keep it to a 2-run deficit on Wednesday. I'm all thrown off with this series and what day is what. But Jack Neely getting the chance to come back and bounce back, and really take care of business. Picks up his 1st and 2nd career strikeouts in Major League Baseball. He did walk 1, didn't really matter at the end of the day. Able to get out of it when it's all said and done. One other quick note, this is more of a Detroit Tigers note. Spencer Torkelson had a hell of a series. 4 hits on Tuesday. He had the home run today. The guy seems to have turned it around since going to Toledo. So any of you just fantasy baseball nerds out there, especially you dynasty nerds, you sickos. I'm a sicko too, so I'm not gonna throw too much shade. Torkelson had a really good series. Certainly something to keep an eye on. And for the Tiger fans that maybe stumble upon this show, certainly a silver lining from the series as a whole for fans to grasp hold of your former number 1 overall pick, starting to look like said number 1 overall pick here after returning from the Toledo Mudhens. That is series results. Now let's address the elephant. Javier Baez's return. It was really cool to be at Wrigley on Tuesday for Javi's return. And it goes just beyond like the tribute video and seeing him. Like, it's just so cool to see the appreciation that still exists for these players. You know what I mean? Like, Chicago is such a city when it comes to sports that is just craving, absolutely craving the championships, the superstars. And really in totality, Chicago doesn't get a lot of those guys. Obviously you've got some great ones. Don't get it twisted here. You've got some great ones. You've got obviously Michael Jordan in the history of this city. You've got guys like Devin Hester. You've got a Brian Urlacher. You've got a Patrick Kane and a Jonathan Tate. You now have a Connor Bedard. You had a Derrick Rose. You had those superstars on the South Side, the Jose Abreu's of the world, the Paul Canercos, etc. Right? Later in his career, but you still had a Jim Thome down there for a little while. Big Hurt, obviously being probably the biggest one, and then even for the Cubs, right? Like you had Ryan Sandberg, you had so many great players, but because of the championship that those guys brought to this city, no matter how bad they've been since, I know Rizzo's had his struggles, especially with his health. Obviously, we know the Chris Bryant situation is very well documented at this point. Javi obviously has struggled immensely since signing in Detroit, but still got all the love in the world from Cubs fans. The standing ovation in this first at bat, the love after the tribute video, an awesome tribute video too, might I add, because you almost forget how many iconic moments Javier Baez had over the course of his Cubs tenure, right? Like the Mother's Day home run to walk it off in the 14th, the World Series homer. Obviously, a lot of people forget he homered in Game 7. The stealing home plate, the heroics in that 2016 playoff run, just all the crazy stuff he did, right? The magician play against the Pirates where he ran backwards down the first baseline. He was such an entertaining player to watch. And I think it brought back a little bit of appreciation, I think, for a lot of people that forgot about, because everybody's so hyper-focused on the current state of these players, right? Chris Bryant is struggling. Javier Baez is struggling. Anthony Rizzo is largely struggling by his measures. But when these guys were Cubs, what they've done in the past and up to this point in their career, you have to just appreciate the incredible moments that they were all a part of. And Javier Baez is no different. So really, really cool to see that. It was just cool to be in the building again for that. And to see Baez at short once again. It had been a while since we had, been used to seeing his name when it was all said and done. Yes, Darren, like you said, Rhino. We were getting back to the Cubs. We had to get through everybody else before we got back to the Cubbies. But really cool return. Really cool to be there for Javi's. I made it a point. I was there the second game of the Bryant series when he was traded to San Francisco. So got to see the love for KB. Even though it wasn't at the ballpark for that one, got to be there on Tuesday night. I originally had tickets for the first game that Rizzo's due back with the Yankees, but I will be out of town. I'm super disappointed. But that's going to be the biggest one, right? Like I think KB is a cool one and still is a cool one. I've gotten to see him now twice come to Wrigley with the Rockies, and he gets just as much love as he did as soon as that trade was done. Obviously, an NL MVP, multiple time All-Star, etc. That Rizzo one's going to be a tearjerker. But this was part one of, the two guys that we hadn't seen at Wrigley since they left the Cubs. Rizzo being the other, Javier Baez being the first. He gets to return for this series. He got to start in 2 games too with, obviously they're going to give Trey Sweeney a ton of playing time at short. So really cool to see Javier Baez still get, the love and really the playing time when it's all said and done. And how it goes from there on out. Omar says here Cubs can't develop their own young players at the big league level. It certainly happened with that core. Maybe not so much with Rizzo. I think Rizzo's the one exception because he was a 30-100 guy for multiple seasons. KB kind of the same way, I would argue. But yeah, there was a magnitude of those guys where certainly they had that issue with. Let's keep things moving. The Cubs get the better end of the Javier Baez return series here, but it's bye-bye Hector. This one really kind of dropped out of nowhere on Tuesday morning. Hector Neris was DFA'd by the Cubs. He did clear waivers, so he was released. There are reports already surfacing. I don't know if anything's secure. I think it is, though. He is going back to Houston, is what it sounds like. So he will be an Astro once again. He will sign for the league minimum, obviously, because he's guaranteed the rest of the money from the Cubs for the rest of the year. But this was a good move for the Cubs because Jed is actually finally starting to worry about 2025 and what this team is going to look like next year. Saves the Cubs $9 million because he can't get to that player option of 60 games appearances as a Cub. And on top of that, you very much solidified saying, hey, he's clearly not our answer even for the rest of this year. Now this is going to give a Jorge Lopez, who I think a lot of people forget was an all-star as a closer, not too many years ago. Going to give guys like him an opportunity. Tyson Miller's been incredible, right? He's a $1.74 ERA. Drew Smiley is going to get more opportunity and run. Porter Hodge got a chance to close the game on Tuesday night and pick up the save. And I think we're going to see a lot more of the guy that replaced Hector Neris on the roster, that being Jack Neely. Neely was, for those that maybe don't recall, Jack Neely was one of the two prospects that the Cubs got in return from the New York Yankees for Mark Leiter Jr. The other one, Benjamin Cowles, is injured for the rest of the year, so we won't see any baseball from him, but he's a utility infielder largely. But Neely was the big piece that they got in this trade, the 6'8" right-hander. He had done a lot of really good things for the Yankees minor leagues. Started the season in AA, was really, really good. Moved up to AAA, was still really strong at the AAA level as well. Comes to the Cubs organization, goes to Iowa, 6 2/3 in 6 games before the call-up of he allowed 1 run, but it was unearned. So effectively, you could, in a way, say you can't totally say scoreless, but you get it. And picked up 3 saves. This is a guy that feels like he can pitch at the back end of a bullpen. And, he's got the stuff. He's displayed it a little bit today against the Tigers, even though he was roughed up in his debut. But let's all remember that Ben Brown got roughed up in his debut too and turned it around and looked really, really good for the Cubs for a long stretch of time before he got hurt. I really like that, the Cubs just made the right move, right? Neris wasn't getting the job done at the end of the day. He allowed a nauseating amount of base runners. I believe the total number was 67 base runners in 44 games or something like that from Hector Neris. It was, I believe, 41 hits and 26 walks. That's not getting it done, even with the 17 saves and the 8-4 record and a sub-4 ERA. Just too many base runners for comfort. So I think the Cubs did the right thing. I love seeing Neely get a chance. He is by technicality the Cubs' number 18 prospect after the most recent top 100 re-rank. And he looked good today. And I hope they continue to throw him out there, especially in low leverage situations. Let him get acclimated. Maybe if he really starts to dial in and shut things down, he has a couple opportunities later in the year, maybe to close a game or something like that, especially if the Cubs are out of it late in September. I think that's only going to be great for his growth. So really, really cool to see him up. Good to see him getting some run at the end of the last 2 games for the Cubs. And will really be interested in seeing where things go from here. Darren with a comment saying, I just don't comprehend why Miller and Lopez haven't been the 8th and 9th inning guys for a minute now. I think they like Miller in tough spots. I think because he's such a slider dependent pitcher. I mean, that's what he predominantly throws, obviously with the fastball, the complement. That's only going to work at certain times. I think he's gotten so good to the fact that they like him when they need to get out of jams. Plus, he also can pitch over an inning pretty routinely. He did an inning in the 3rd the other night. I know he's done that multiple times this season. I don't think Counsell wants to. I don't think he has identified anybody as that guy. And in fairness, I don't think their Cubs really had anybody that was that guy, right? At the beginning of the year, everybody thought, okay, Neris is going to be the setup man for Alzolay. Alzolay's done for the year, and Neris isn't even a Cub anymore, right? So I think a lot of these guys are especially down the stretch here. If the Cubs get into the postseason, you'll figure out quickly who they've identified as their 8 and 9s. I think it's just they're kind of playing, trial by fire right now because the whole bullpen has been really good. I mean, Neely's, blunders on the Wednesday night probably ruined their ERA a little bit. But I mean, entering that game on Tuesday was a 186 ERA since June 27th, which is by far the best in baseball. And I think Council just says, hey, all these guys can get the job done. And I think that's just how they're rolling it. They're just continuing to roll guys out and kind of play the hot hand almost in a lot of ways. I don't have a lot more time with you guys here today, but I do want to talk about a couple more things because again, everybody loves to talk about the Cubs playoff chances, and we're gonna summarize that all here toward the end. But it's something I wanted to bring up because I saw it today at the tail end of the Cubs game, and I sat back and was like, wow, they have really been playing some good ball. And it's in relation to the last 6 series. Their last 6 series, for those that maybe don't recall, have been against the Cardinals, the Twins, the White Sox, the Guardians, the Blue Jays, and the Tigers. So, quick math there, 4 AL Central teams, an AL East team, and then your division rival in St. Louis. The Cubs have been really good. 3 of 4 against the Cardinals. I was at that Sunday night baseball game that concluded that series. 2 of 3 against the Twins. I was at one of those 2 games as well, also a win. The 2 over the White Sox on the south side. But they got swept in Cleveland, and then they won 2 of 3 over the Blue Jays and 2 of 3 over the Tigers. And this is from the Cub Hub at Cubs Skipper. And the following part was, can we just delete the Cleveland series? And it really does feel that way. Like, that is the only major blunder of baseball that this Cubs team has played in the month of August. Otherwise, they have been really freaking good in this month. And there's still a lot of baseball to go, right? We're going to talk about one of them here coming up in the upcoming series against the Marlins. But you've got the Pirates, you got the Nats. You start a series then with the Pirates right after that back at Wrigley at the beginning of September. And then you have a series with the Yankees. Like, that's the first real tough, like hardcore tough opponent that the Cubs are going to see. And you're 4 series potentially to capture wins and get something done at the end of the day. I'm going to look it up here. I want to get their exact August results thus far, and I know they'll have them here. We're on the good old baseball reference for those that are following at home. I know there's a way I can see it. Schedule and results. Here we go. Yeah, they played really good baseball. 10-7 so far in the month of August. And even if they take one, 11-6. If they take one in that Cleveland series in the month of August, really, really good baseball from this Cubs team. And K. Bruce says here it's a really good opportunity to pop 6 wins coming up here in these next 2 series. I would make the argument in the next 4 series, inevitably it's baseball. They're not going to win, quick math, 12 games straight. Probably not. Let me say they're probably not going to win 12 straight. But in the next 12 games, if you can take 9 of those games, this Cubs team is sitting really, really pretty in the standings if they can pull that off. Even if they take 8, because I believe 8 gets them essentially 2 of 3 in each of these series. That's exactly what they need to do coming up here. And we're going to dive into that a little bit further and a little bit deeper. But they've played really good baseball so far here in this month. And I think that is certainly worth highlighting when it's all said and done at the end of the day. Darren said here just a little bit ago, good point on Miller, Ron. I can come to terms with that. He's been nasty, almost an escape artist of sorts. I think he was doing Mark Leiter Jr.'s job better than Mark Leiter Jr. was. And I think it's a large reason why the Cubs were okay with trading him. But a $1.74 ERA looks really good for a guy like Tyson. And again, that's not just in his Cubs tenure. That's full season. So if we go just by what he's done in a Cubs uniform, I believe that number's even that. Got to confirm it. I'm a numbers guy. I don't like just spewing shit out if it's not accurate. Yeah, it's even better. In 33 games now, which is 35 innings of work. So again, he's gone over an inning a few times now. 9 holds. He has 0 for 1 on save opportunities, which neither here nor there. He's only walked 5 guys. He's K'd 29 and a buck 29 ERA for Dyson Miller. That's a hot number for Dyson Miller. And again, he's been a large part of the bullpen turnaround. I mean, I know we all dog Jed for what he does and doesn't do, but some of these waiver wire mid-season bullpen pickups that he's managed to find have really paid off for the Cubs. And I think Tyson Miller is the shining example of that with that buck 29 ERA since he's joined the Cubs. I'm going to take a quick sip here. Oh, all right. Here we go. Let's keep things moving along, ladies and gents. Playoff chances. Everybody loves to talk about the playoffs. Well, the Cubs are still 10.5 out of the division. Unless the Brewers absolutely collapse and the Cubs go on borderline a historic run, it's going to be tough. But I will say here that the Cubs now have just 5 games in between, which sucks because it feels like that number doesn't change when they win. And I think that's why that Cleveland series hurt so much, because they were within 3 games, only for it to be pissed away because of the results of being swept. But again, with a I don't want to call it a cakewalk schedule. It's baseball. Anybody can beat anybody on any given day. But with a favorable schedule, we'll call it, on the horizon here for the Cubs, you've got just a half game back of the Cards, a game and a half back of the Giants, and then a little further back of the Mets, who are a game and a half out of that last wild card spot. Atlanta is holding on by a thread to that final spot. I mean, the Padres and Diamondbacks are both 4 games clear of that final spot. So unless they also play miserable ball down the stretch in September, those two feel like they're going to have a legitimate shot at the playoffs. But I would make the argument that the Cubs have a chance. The Giants have a pretty, respectable schedule coming up, as do the Mets, as do the Cardinals. I mean, the Brewers can actually help the Cubs quite a bit because they play all 3 of those teams before the season's said and done. It's going to be interesting. Again, it really is, it's day to day, but there's still so much baseball left that this picture is going to continue to move. And that's part of the fun of baseball, right? is that playoff picture moving on a day-to-day basis. But I'm interested to see, especially after that stretch with the Yankees and the Dodgers, because the Cubs have 6 straight games against those 2 teams. It's at that point that I'm interested to see what happens, because if the Cubs can stay afloat, and let's say they lose 2 of 3 to one of those 2, and then they win 2 of 3 against the other, and they can split it 3-3. They have the Rockies. They've got 4 with the Nats. That follows a 3-game set with the Oakland Athletics, which will be the next time I'll be at Wrigley. And then you've got the Nats, I believe I'm sorry. It's the Nats, then the Phillies. The Philly series is going to be nasty, especially if the Cubs are within a couple games. At that point, you're hoping that the Phillies are kind of bending over and are like, yeah, we're in the playoffs, we're done. And they let the Cubs kind of win a few, is really what we got to hope for there. And then you finish it out with the Reds, who, yes, they're a thorn in the Cubs' side, but they're a beatable team. It's going to be really interesting just seeing how this thing comes out at the end of the season. I will say the Cubs are really good at Wrigley Field, and the Cubs are at Wrigley quite a bit in September, which is going to be good for them. They're done at Wrigley in the month of August, but they have plenty of time coming up here in the month of September at Wrigley Field. But they're 36-29 at Wrigley this year. They're 27-36 on the road. That's what really kills them right now. And then 35-40 against teams better than 500. We'll have to wait and see. Cubs, there's a chance. So you're saying there's a chance. There's a chance. But there's still way too much baseball right now to totally write the Cubs off, because they are still within striking distance of that final wild card spot. They have a lot of work ahead of them, and they need a lot of help. But I won't say never just yet, because the fat lady hasn't hasn't entirely sank. $1.29, only 5 walks is huge. Yes, it is, Derek. Tyson Miller, I'm telling you, man, he's been really freaking good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before I wrap this thing up here today, we got to look at what's on tap next, and that is the Miami Marlins. Talk about a winnable series on the docket. The Cubs need this one, plain and simple. The Cubs need this one. The Marlins are 46 and 81. They're really bad. They're probably going to lose 100 games. The Cubs, this is if there's any series on the schedule the rest of the season where they could absolutely sweep a team, it's this one. It's absolutely this one. Go out, take care of business, get 3 wins real quick, and then go to Pittsburgh and take at least 2 of 3. And then you get an off day before you venture to Washington for 3 more. And that's a quick trip from Pittsburgh to Washington. They've got a real opportunity to gain a lot of ground in that wild card picture by the time they play back at Wrigley next, which will again be against that same Pirates team who largely they should be able to beat. Now, obviously, if you run into Skeens or Jones, that's going to hurt. Jones is on his way back. He just had a really good rehab stint with the Indianapolis Indians recently. This is the series. Go take 3. Go take 3. And I hope whoever's here on Sunday night show from Cubs on Tap, myself or any of the other 4, that we're sitting here and talking fully about a sweep and the Cubs gaining some ground with a 3-game winning streak. And again, would be a 4-game winning streak with today's win. That would be what you like to see. Kyle Hendricks will take the bump on Friday. That is a 6:10 Central Time start because of the Eastern Time Zone. Max Meyer will be on the mound for the Marlins on Friday. Marlins have not announced their starter on Saturday or Sunday just yet. But for the Cubbies, it will be Shota on Saturday. That's a 3:10 Central Time start. And then it'll be Javier Assad on Sunday for getaway day. That's a 12:40 p.m. Central Time start. So that's an early game. Be on the lookout for that one. All these games can be found on Marquee. And Friday's game, actually, it looks like all these games might be the watch-free games on MLB TV down the stretch here, too, if you're looking to find those as well. 3 winnable ones coming up for the Cubbies against the Marlins. They take 2 of 3 against the Tigers, and they come away with a series win, 5 games out of a wild card picture. It's not over just yet. There's a lot that needs to turn around and work in their favor, but again, just like we said a little bit ago, we're not going to say never just yet, because as long as they keep putting together series wins like they have, 5 of their last 6 they have won, there's a chance, and we'll have to wait and see how things persist. Before I get out of here, as always, ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you that Cubs on Tap is one of 2 official Cubs shows here at the On Tap Sports Network covering the Chicago Cubs. Be sure to check out our friends over at the Dingers Podcast. They are at Dinger Cubs on the socials, and you can also find them here on the On Tap Sports Net YouTube. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, hit the bell button. You'll know when all of our shows go live, including our friends over at Dingers, including us at Cubs on Tap as well. We are at Cubbies on Tap on the socials. I am at Loose on Tap. Be sure to follow the rest of the crew as well. Juice on Tap, Teddy Freddy 270, Joey Knows Nothing, Nick _ on Tap, Silent Bob _2, and of course, Bulls Guy Rob, our boy Rob Wegley. Be sure to follow everybody contributing here on the Cubs side of the house. Bears is in full swing. Be sure to check out Bears on Tap. Next show will be coming to you live next week on late Tuesday evening will be the next one. If you haven't already, go check out our last show here from this past Tuesday, talking about the most recent episode of Hard Knocks. And ladies and gentlemen, we are not far away from Bears football games. So be on the lookout for Bears post games and pregame shows, pregame preview shows, I should say, coming to you live just a few days before each Bears game. You can also check out the fall sports because those are coming back around as well. Bulls on Tap, as well as the Four Feathers podcast. We got Bulls and Blackhawks covered here at On Tap Sports. And yes, Cubs fans, we're still invested in baseball. Your friends that like the Southsiders might not be so much, but if they are, if they're holding on to the last bits of summer, because as soon as baseball's over, we go into good old fall and winter here in the Chicagoland area. Send your friends to our friends, and they can be friends over at Sox on Tap. OnTapSportsNet.com, at OnTapSportsNet on the socials, the OnTap Sports Network. Go ahead and check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. It's always good to get on a Cubs on Tap show after a series victory. It's nice that they did it against the Detroit Tigers team that was beatable and they took care of business. They got three more with a very beatable team coming up here this weekend with the Miami Marlins. Cubs on Tap. We'll be back with you here live on the On Tap Sportsnet YouTube, Facebook, and X pages following that Marlins series. It'll likely be an evening show, so tune in with us here on Sunday night as that series is recapped and we look ahead to a Pittsburgh Pirates series on the road at the beginning of next week. Until then, as always, I am Ron Luce. Cubbies win. Cubbies take 2 out of 3 from the Tigers. It's on to Miami. We're going to get out of here. The only way we know at Cubs on Tap, FTC, FTB for S and G, and let's go Cubs.